When you're trying to make D&D miniatures and terrain out of stuff that you find from thrift stores, there's gonna be some losers. And this video is definitely a situation where I screwed up, and the project turned out not up to my standards. Our story begins with this interesting looking toy ship that I found at my local thrift store. I had an idea that if I managed to tear away all the little bits and pieces on there, then frankly I would be able to rejigger this as a cool little longboat. The process of tearing it apart took a little bit longer than expected. It actually had like little metal bits holding this thing together. I'm not sure what toy line this was from, but man, they built it super sturdy, which is something you generally don't see nowadays. Once all the bits and pieces were taken out, I took a look at what I had left. Clearly, I would have to sand this thing down first, and then fill in some of these gaps if I was going to use it as a normal boat. I used extra fine sandpaper on this, just so I don't, gouge it up really that much. The idea here is to simply slightly roughen up the surface so spray primer goes on smoothly. Spray primer is generally my first choice when it comes to hard plastic toys like these. Alright, pay attention people, because this is where it goes very, very badly. I don't know if anybody has had really good results with instant putty. All I can tell you is that it goes bad. There is a shelf life on this stuff. I got it on deep discount clearance. It must have been very, very old stock because this stuff was awful. I've used Milliput, green stuff, I've sculpted, I know how to sculpt. This stuff was so old, it just didn't work anymore, and I was really dumb for buying sculpting putty on clearance. Never again. Don't do this unless somehow you know for sure that it's not like super old stock, which I don't know how you would do that online. It was very clear that it was all crumbly and useless, but this is where I made my second big mistake. I decided to push forward and try to use it anyways, which was a very, very dumb idea because once this stuff hardens, it's like hard as a rock. That of course means after I decided to use it, it was there, and I couldn't tear it out without taking a bunch of time. It was just a really bad mistake. So after this point, I just spray painted it, gave it a wash, painted the seats red, and just called it a day. Sometimes you gotta realize you've made a mistake and just call it quits on a project rather than just putting a ton of work in that you don't really need to do. I needed a boat for one of my D&D sessions. I have a boat. It looks okay-ish on the table, and frankly, you just gotta know when to cut your losses. The most important lesson here is that you should never cheap out on your crafting supplies. This whole channel is about finding inexpensive stuff to use for D&D, but if you cheap out on the tools that you use for crafting, you will always regret it. Don't buy stuff like this on deep clearance. Try to find stuff that you know is probably new product, and just don't cheap out on your tools that you're going to be working with, because in the long run, you're just going to waste more money.